You're crumbling under stress that mentally unbreakable people navigate effortlessly through cultivated habits that transform pressure into strength. Recognizing that mental resilience is not innate character trait, but trainable skill built through specific systematic stress management practices. Knowing that mentally unbreakable means developing the psychological armor and recovery capacity that enables thriving under pressure, rather than merely surviving or breaking down completely. Understanding that 10 specific habits practiced consistently create extraordinary stress resistance that makes you impervious to pressures that overwhelm others, making mental unbreakability accessible to anyone willing to build systematic resilience, and losing years of potential achievement, peace, and well-being to chronic stress that destroys health, relationships, and performance, because without systematic stress management habits, you remain vulnerable to every pressure, making resilience development essential. This stress vulnerability is systematically destroying your life by ensuring that normal pressures feel overwhelming, creating constant anxiety, exhaustion, and inability to function effectively, damaging your physical health through chronic cortisol elevation, creating cardiovascular problems, weakened immunity, and accelerated aging, destroying your relationships through irritability, emotional unavailability, and stress-induced conflict, limiting your career advancement through reduced performance, decision quality, and burnout, preventing achievement of potential, preventing joy and fulfillment, by keeping you in perpetual survival mode, unable to appreciate life's positive experiences, and ensuring that decades pass in suffering stress that systematic habits would have transformed into manageable challenge, making habit development essential. Building mental unbreakability is not about eliminating all stress or developing superhuman tolerance, but about systematic practices that increase stress capacity and accelerate recovery, not about never feeling pressure, but about maintaining effectiveness and well-being despite pressure through proven resilience habits, and not mysterious toughness, but learnable frameworks. This audiobook teaches 10 stress management habits that make you mentally unbreakable, including establishing non-negotiable recovery rituals, practicing daily stress inoculation, maintaining rigorous physical foundation, deploying cognitive reframing systematically, building deep social support network, creating clear boundaries, protecting energy, developing present moment awareness practice, maintaining optimistic explanatory style, engaging regular cathartic release, and integrating all habits into resilient lifestyle, making mental unbreakability systematic, sustainable, and genuinely transformative. Stop breaking under pressure and start building mental unbreakability. Stop stress-induced suffering and start systematic resilience. Implement 10 stress management habits consistently, practice daily, and become mentally unbreakable through unwavering commitment, starting now. Chapter 1. Habit 1. Establish non-negotiable recovery rituals. Chapter 1 establishes non-negotiable recovery rituals, creating systematic stress recovery, preventing the chronic accumulation that destroys health and performance. The recovery necessity shows that stress itself is not inherently harmful, but rather normal adaptive response that becomes destructive only when chronic and unrecovered. That acute stress followed by adequate recovery actually strengthens resilience through biological adaptation similar to muscle growth from exercise. That recovery is active process requiring deliberate practice, not merely passive rest or absence of stress. That treating recovery as optional luxury rather than biological necessity guarantees eventual breakdown regardless of current stress tolerance, and understanding that non-negotiable means treating recovery rituals with same absolute priority as eating, sleeping, or breathing, making them foundational habit for mental unbreakability, not something done only when convenient or after everything else is finished. Recovery prevents chronic stress accumulation. Schedule non-negotiable rituals. Recover systematically or break down inevitably. The chronic stress damage mechanism reveals why recovery matters so profoundly for long-term resilience and health. Acute stress triggers cortisol release and sympathetic nervous system activation, preparing body for challenge through increased heart rate, blood pressure, and mental alertness. This response is healthy, adaptive, and performance-enhancing when followed by recovery period, allowing cortisol to normalize and parasympathetic nervous system to restore baseline. However, when stress continues without recovery, chronic cortisol elevation damages hippocampus, impairing memory and learning, weakens immune system, increasing illness susceptibility, elevates cardiovascular disease risk, accelerates cellular aging, and creates anxiety and depression through neurochemical imbalances. Recovery interrupts this destructive cascade, allowing biological systems to restore healthy functioning. The daily recovery minimum establishes baseline practices that must occur every single day without exception, regardless of workload deadlines or competing demands. Quality sleep represents most critical daily recovery, requiring 7 to 9 hours for most adults, with consistent sleep and wake times creating circadian rhythm stability. Sleep deprivation destroys stress resilience more rapidly and completely than any other single factor, making sleep the absolute foundation. Brief recovery breaks during workday, including 5-minute breaks every 90 minutes, prevent cumulative stress buildup through micro-recovery opportunities. Evening wind-down ritual 1 hour before bed, including dimmed lights, reduce stimulation, and calming activities signals body to begin sleep preparation. These daily minimums are non-negotiable, meaning they happen every day regardless of circumstances, because skipping them guarantees degraded resilience. The weekly recovery rhythm recognizes that daily recovery alone is insufficient for sustained resilience, requiring weekly cycle, including full rest day, engaging hobby or activity unrelated to work, and dedicated social connection time. Full rest day means complete break from work-related activities, allowing deeper recovery than daily breaks provide. Engaging hobby activates different brain regions than work, providing true mental recovery through cognitive variety rather than mere inactivity. Social connection time satisfies fundamental human need for belonging and provides emotional recovery through sharing experiences and receiving support. Weekly rhythm creates sustainable long-term resilience, where daily-only recovery gradually depletes over months. The active recovery principle distinguishes between passive rest and active recovery practices that accelerate restoration. Physical active recovery includes gentle movement like walking, yoga, or swimming that promotes blood flow and reduces muscle tension without creating additional stress. Mental active recovery involves engaging different cognitive activities than primary work, such as reading fiction, playing music, or learning new skill, providing recovery through variety, not cessation. Emotional active recovery requires processing and expressing emotions through journaling, conversation, or creative expression, preventing emotional suppression that creates ongoing stress. Social active recovery involves meaningful connection and vulnerability with trusted individuals, providing support and perspective. Active recovery accelerates restoration beyond passive rest alone. The ritual structure transforms recovery from vague intention into reliable habit through specific concrete practices performed at consistent times. Morning ritual might include 10-minute meditation, gentle stretching, and healthy breakfast, creating positive start. Evening ritual might include 30-minute walk, journaling, and reading, preparing body and mind for sleep. Weekend ritual might include longer exercise session, hobby time, and social activity, providing deeper weekly recovery. Specific structured rituals execute reliably where vague intentions fail under pressure. The protection requirement means actively defending recovery time against intrusions, treating recovery appointments as seriously as important meetings. This requires saying no to requests that conflict with recovery time, communicating boundaries clearly to others about protected recovery periods, scheduling recovery in calendar, making it visible and official, and resisting guilt about prioritizing recovery, recognizing that sustainable high performance requires systematic restoration. Without active protection, competing demands inevitably consume recovery time. The implementation requires identifying specific non-negotiable daily recovery practices, including sleep duration and evening wind-down ritual, establishing weekly recovery rhythm, including full rest day and hobby engagement, scheduling recovery time in calendar, protecting it as rigorously as work commitments, engaging active recovery through physical, mental, emotional, and social practices, not just passive rest, and treating systematic recovery as creating stress capacity and preventing breakdown where recovery neglect guaranteed eventual collapse regardless of current resilience level. Recovery prevents chronic stress accumulation. Schedule non-negotiable rituals. Recover systematically or break down inevitably. You understand now that unrecovered stress accumulates destructively, that recovery is active process requiring deliberate practice, that daily and weekly rhythms both matter, that active recovery accelerates restoration, and that Chapter 1 provides recovery foundation, making sustained resilience possible where recovery neglect guaranteed breakdown. Chapter 2. Habit 2. Practice daily stress inoculation through controlled exposure. Chapter 2 practices daily stress inoculation, building extraordinary stress tolerance through deliberate controlled voluntary exposure to manageable stresses. The stress inoculation principle shows that systematic exposure to small controlled doses of stress in safe contexts builds resilience and capacity to handle larger uncontrolled stresses, that this works through same biological mechanism as vaccines where controlled exposure to weakened pathogen creates immunity to dangerous infection, that completely avoiding all stress creates fragility and vulnerability, making even minor pressures feel overwhelming. That strategic voluntary stress exposure creates anti-fragility where you actually become stronger through challenge rather than merely tolerating it. And understanding that daily stress inoculation practice is essential training for mental unbreakability, making you progressively more resistant to pressures that would break untrained individuals. Voluntary stress builds stress tolerance. Practice controlled exposure daily. Inoculate systematically or remain fragile. The biological adaptation mechanism reveals why deliberate stress exposure creates resilience rather than damage. When you expose yourself to controlled stressor like cold shower or intense exercise, body responds by activating stress response systems, including cortisol release and sympathetic activation. Because exposure is brief, controlled, and followed by recovery, body adapts by strengthening stress response capacity, making next exposure feel less intense. Repeated exposure creates progressive adaptation, where what initially felt extremely challenging becomes manageable, then eventually easy. This adaptation transfers to other stresses, creating general stress resilience, not just tolerance to specific practice stressor. The key is controlled voluntary exposure, allowing adaptation, not chronic, overwhelming exposure, creating damage. The cold exposure practice provides accessible daily stress inoculation through brief exposure to cold water. Start with 30 seconds of cold water at end of normal shower. Cold triggers intense stress response, creating strong desire to escape, providing perfect opportunity to practice staying present with discomfort. Breathe deeply and remain in cold for committed duration despite discomfort. After several days, increase to 1 minute, then gradually to 2 or 3 minutes as tolerance builds. Cold exposure creates genuine acute stress in completely safe, controlled context, making it ideal inoculation training. Research shows regular cold exposure increases stress resilience, reduces inflammation, and improves mood through adaptation mechanisms. The exercise intensity inoculation uses deliberately challenging workouts to build stress tolerance through physical challenge. High-intensity interval training, sprint intervals, or heavy strength training all create significant acute physiological stress, forcing cardiovascular, respiratory, and muscular systems to adapt. The discomfort of intense exercise provides opportunity to practice continuing despite strong urge to stop, building mental toughness that transfers to other challenges. Exercise intensity should push limits without causing injury, requiring finding edge between challenging and overwhelming. Regular intense exercise builds both physical and mental resilience through stress adaptation. The fasting practice creates controlled metabolic stress, building tolerance through periodic food restriction. Start with 12-hour overnight fast, extending natural sleep-related fasting. Progress to 16-hour intermittent fasting, eating only during 8-hour window. Fasting creates genuine stress, including hunger, discomfort, and mental preoccupation with food, providing opportunity to practice functioning effectively despite discomfort. Fasting triggers beneficial stress adaptations, including increased growth hormone, improved insulin sensitivity, and enhanced autophagy cellular cleaning process. The key is controlled duration with proper feed, not extended fasting creating harm. The uncomfortable conversation inoculation involves deliberately initiating difficult, necessary conversations, creating social stress in controlled context. This might include requesting raise, giving honest feedback, or setting boundary. Social stress from potential conflict or rejection triggers powerful stress response, making uncomfortable conversations excellent inoculation opportunity. Practicing voluntary difficult conversations builds confidence and reduces social anxiety through exposure adaptation. Start with low-stakes conversations, gradually building to more significant interactions as confidence grows. The progressive exposure principle establishes that effective inoculation requires starting with manageable intensity, then gradually increasing difficulty as capacity builds. Beginning with extreme stress creates trauma and avoidance, not resilience and adaptation. Start cold exposure at 30 seconds, not jumping directly to 5-minute ice bath. Start fasting at 12 hours, not attempting multi-day fast immediately. Start uncomfortable conversations with low-stakes topics, not immediately confronting most feared scenario. Progressive exposure allows biological and psychological systems to adapt incrementally, creating steady resilience growth without overwhelming capacity triggering shutdown. The recovery requirement means controlled stress exposure must be followed by adequate recovery, allowing adaptation to occur. Inoculation works through stress recovery cycle, not stress alone. After cold shower or intense workout, allow body to warm and recover. After difficult conversation, process emotions and decompress. Without recovery, repeated stress becomes chronic damaging exposure, not inoculating adaptive exposure. Plan recovery time after inoculation practice, treating it as essential component, not optional afterthought. The daily practice consistency builds cumulative adaptation that sporadic exposure cannot create. Daily brief cold shower creates progressive adaptation where weekly longer exposure does not. Consistency allows biological systems to adapt incrementally, building resilience steadily over weeks and months. Missing days interrupts adaptation, requiring rebuilding lost ground. Commit to daily practice even when inconvenient because consistency creates transformation. The implementation requires selecting one primary controlled stressor for daily practice, choosing from cold exposure, intense exercise, fasting, or uncomfortable conversations, starting with genuinely manageable intensity that challenges without overwhelming. Practicing chosen stressor daily at consistent time, gradually increasing difficulty as initial intensity becomes comfortable, allowing adequate recovery after each exposure, and treating stress inoculation as systematic resilience training. Building extraordinary stress tolerance where stress avoidance created fragility, making even minor pressures overwhelming. Voluntary stress builds stress tolerance. Practice controlled exposure daily. Inoculate systematically or remain fragile. You understand now that controlled exposure builds resilience through adaptation, that progressive intensity prevents overwhelm, that daily consistency creates cumulative growth, that recovery enables adaptation, and that Chapter 2 provides inoculation practice, making stress tolerance extraordinary where avoidance created fragility. Chapter 3. Habit 3. Maintain rigorous physical foundation. Chapter 3 maintains rigorous physical foundation, recognizing that physical resilience enables and determines mental stress resilience. The mind-body connection shows that physical state profoundly affects mental and emotional stress capacity with robust physical health, creating psychological resilience, while physical depletion guaranteeing mental vulnerability. That attempting mental resilience training while neglecting physical foundation is like building house on sand where structure inevitably collapses under pressure. That brain and body are integrated system, not separate entities, making physical optimization essential. For mental optimization, that stress response is fundamentally physiological process mediated by nervous system and hormones, making physical health primary determinant of stress resilience, and understanding that rigorous physical foundation including sleep, exercise and nutrition is absolute non-negotiable prerequisite for mental unbreakability, not optional enhancement, but foundational requirement. Physical health enables mental resilience. Prioritize sleep, exercise, nutrition. Build physical foundation or guarantee stress vulnerability. The sleep priority establishes quality sleep as single most critical factor determining stress resilience with profound effects exceeding any other intervention. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night is biological necessity, not lifestyle preference, with sleep deprivation destroying stress capacity more rapidly and completely than any other factor. During sleep, brain consolidates memories, processes emotions, clears metabolic waste, and restores neurotransmitter balance. Chronic sleep deprivation impairs prefrontal cortex executive function, reducing decision quality, impulse control, and emotional regulation, precisely when stress demands these capacities most. Sleep deprivation elevates baseline cortisol, creating chronic stress state, making additional stressors feel overwhelming. Research shows even single night of poor sleep significantly reduces stress tolerance, while consistent quality sleep dramatically enhances resilience. Sleep is non-negotiable foundation, requiring protecting bedtime, maintaining consistent sleep schedule, optimizing sleep environment for darkness, quiet and coolness, and avoiding screens, caffeine and alcohol before bed. The exercise requirement includes regular physical activity as essential stress management tool with multiple mechanisms enhancing resilience. Cardiovascular exercise, including running, cycling, or swimming, reduces baseline stress hormones including cortisol and adrenaline, while increasing mood-enhancing endorphins and endocannabinoids, creating neurochemical environment supporting stress resilience. Strength training builds physical toughness that transfers to mental toughness through accomplishing difficult physical challenges, proving capability, and building confidence. Regular exercise improves sleep quality, creating virtuous cycle, where exercise enhances sleep and sleep enhances exercise recovery. Movement throughout day prevents sedentary stress from prolonged sitting, which elevates cortisol and reduces metabolic health. Minimum 30 minutes of moderate to vigorous exercise most days provides substantial stress resilience benefits with greater frequency, intensity, and duration, creating proportionally greater resilience. The Nutrition Foundation recognizes that food choices profoundly affect stress physiology through blood sugar stability, neurotransmitter production, and inflammation. Stable blood sugar through adequate protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates prevents energy crashes and mood instability that amplify stress response. Protein provides amino acids needed for neurotransmitter synthesis, including serotonin and dopamine that regulate mood and stress response. Omega-3 fatty acids from fish reduce inflammation and support brain health, enhancing stress resilience. Complex carbohydrates from vegetables, whole grains, and legumes provide sustained energy without blood sugar spikes. Adequate hydration supports all physiological functions, with even mild dehydration impairing cognitive performance and increasing stress hormones. Limiting caffeine prevents overstimulation of already activated stress response, with excessive caffeine creating jittery anxiety, mimicking and amplifying stress. Limiting alcohol prevents sleep disruption, mood destabilization, and impaired stress recovery that alcohol consumption creates despite temporary relaxation feeling. The Physical Foundation synergy shows that sleep, exercise, and nutrition interact synergistically, where each enhances others, creating compounding benefits. Exercise improves sleep quality and appetite regulation. Quality sleep enhances exercise recovery and supports healthy food choices. Good nutrition provides energy for exercise and supports quality sleep. Conversely, neglecting any element undermines others, creating downward spiral, where poor sleep reduces exercise motivation. Lack of exercise impairs sleep quality, and both led to poor food choices that further degrade sleep and exercise, creating a vicious cycle of declining resilience. The stress hormone regulation through physical health shows how Physical Foundation directly affects stress biochemistry. Chronic sleep deprivation elevates baseline cortisol, creating constant low-level stress state. Sedentary lifestyle allows stress hormones to remain elevated without physical outlet for discharge. Poor nutrition, including excess sugar and processed foods, creates inflammation that sensitizes stress response. Conversely, adequate sleep normalizes cortisol rhythm. Regular exercise provides outlet for stress hormone discharge, and anti-inflammatory nutrition reduces stress sensitivity, creating biochemical environment supporting resilience. The energy management principle recognizes that stress resilience requires adequate physical energy, with depleted energy guaranteeing stress vulnerability. Sleep deprivation creates energy deficit, making even minor stresses feel overwhelming. Poor nutrition causes energy crashes, reducing stress capacity. Lack of exercise paradoxically reduces energy through deconditioning despite saving effort. Maintaining high baseline energy through robust physical health creates reserve capacity, enabling effective stress response. The implementation requires prioritizing 7 to 9 hours quality sleep, absolutely treating it as non-negotiable foundation. Engaging minimum 30 minutes moderate to vigorous exercise most days, combining cardiovascular and strength training. Eating whole foods, emphasizing protein, vegetables, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates while limiting processed foods, sugar, caffeine, and alcohol. Staying adequately hydrated throughout day, and treating rigorous physical foundation as enabling. Mental stress resilience, where physical neglect guaranteed mental stress vulnerability regardless of psychological techniques practiced. Physical health enables mental resilience. Prioritize sleep, exercise, nutrition. Build physical foundation or guarantee stress vulnerability. You understand now that sleep is most critical resilience factor, that exercise reduces stress hormones and builds toughness, that nutrition affects stress biochemistry, that physical elements synergize powerfully, and that Chapter 3 provides physical foundation, making mental resilience possible where physical neglect guaranteed stress vulnerability. Chapter 4. Habit 4. Deploy cognitive reframing to transform stress perception. Chapter 4 deploys cognitive reframing, systematically transforming stress perception from overwhelming threat into manageable challenge. The perception determines response principle shows that objective stressor itself is relatively neutral, but subjective interpretation as either threat or challenge determines whether stress response helps or harms. That perceiving situation as threat activates destructive stress response, including performance impairment, immune suppression, and negative emotions. That perceiving identical situation as challenge activates productive stress response, including enhanced performance, immune function, and energized emotions. That perception is not fixed reality, but malleable interpretation under your control through deliberate cognitive reframing practice, and understanding that mastering reframing transforms same objective stresses from destructive overwhelming experiences into productive growth opportunities, making reframing essential mental unbreakability skill. Perception determines stress impact. Reframe threat as challenge. Transform interpretation or suffer unnecessarily. The threat versus challenge physiology reveals profound differences in stress response depending on perception. Threat perception triggers classic fight or flight response with cortisol flooding system, blood flow redirecting from brain to muscles, immune system suppressing, and performance declining through cognitive impairment and excessive arousal. This response evolved for life-threatening physical dangers where fighting or fleeing were only options, making sophisticated thinking counterproductive. However, modern stressors rarely involve physical danger, making threat response maladaptive, creating suffering without benefit. Challenge perception triggers different physiological pattern with moderate cortisol increase, maintained blood flow to brain supporting clear thinking, immune function enhancing, and performance improving through optimal arousal level. Challenge response treats stressor as difficult but manageable situation where skills and effort can prevail, creating energized focused states supporting effective action. The automatic appraisal awareness recognizes that threat versus challenge interpretation happens automatically instantly based on learned patterns requiring conscious intervention to change. Under stress, brain rapidly appraises situation asking, can I handle this with available resources? If answer is no, threat response activates. If answer is yes, challenge response activates. Most people have automatic threat bias, interpreting ambiguous situations as threats, creating unnecessary suffering. Becoming aware of your automatic appraisals is first step toward changing them. Notice when you interpret situation as overwhelming, impossible, or threatening, recognizing this as automatic pattern, not objective reality. The deliberate reframe practice involves consciously replacing automatic threat interpretation with challenge interpretation through systematic questioning and perspective shifts. When facing stressor and noticing threat response, pause and ask, what skills or resources do I have for handling this? What can I learn from this experience? How might I grow stronger through this challenge? And what is best realistic outcome I can work toward? These questions shift perspective from helpless overwhelm to capable engagement, transforming threat into challenge. Initially, reframing requires deliberate conscious effort, but with practice becomes increasingly automatic. The challenge mindset statements provide specific language for reframing common threat interpretations into challenge perspective. Reframe this is terrible, I cannot handle this into this is difficult, and I can handle difficult things. Reframe I am going to fail into I might struggle, but struggling is how I learn and grow. Reframe this should not be happening into this is happening, and I will deal with it effectively. Reframe why does this always happen to me into this is temporary challenge I will overcome. Each reframe acknowledges difficulty while maintaining sense of capability and growth potential. The growth opportunity reframe finds specific learning or development embedded in stressful situation, transforming pure negative into mixed experience containing valuable positive elements. Difficult project teaches new skills. Conflict provides opportunity to improve communication. Failure reveals areas for development. Loss creates space for new possibilities. Finding genuine growth opportunity does not deny difficulty, but adds meaning and purpose that make difficulty worthwhile. Ask, what can I learn from this? How might this make me stronger or wiser? What opportunity might this difficulty create? And what would my future self appreciate about having gone through this? The temporary perspective reframe combats catastrophizing by recognizing that all situations are temporary, preventing perception of current difficulty as permanent, unchangeable reality. When stress feels overwhelming, remind yourself this is temporary, not permanent. This too shall pass. I have survived every difficult day so far, and future me will look back on this as past challenge overcome. Temporary perspective prevents present difficulty from feeling like eternal suffering, creating hope and endurance. The evidence-gathering practice strengthens challenge reframes by identifying concrete evidence supporting capability. When reframing as challenge, list specific examples of past challenges overcome. skills and resources currently available, and people who can provide support. Concrete evidence makes challenge reframe feel real and believable rather than empty positive thinking. Review past successes regularly, building confidence in capability to handle difficulty. The implementation requires developing awareness of automatic threat appraisals, noticing when you interpret situations as overwhelming or impossible, deliberately pausing to reframe threat interpretations as challenge using specific questions and statements, finding genuine growth opportunities embedded in difficulties, maintaining temporary perspective, preventing catastrophizing, gathering concrete evidence of capability, strengthening challenge perception, practicing reframe until it becomes increasingly automatic, and treating cognitive reframing as transforming stress experience, where automatic threat perception created unnecessary suffering, amplifying objective difficulty through destructive interpretation. Perception determines stress impact. Reframe threat as challenge. Transform interpretation or suffer unnecessarily. You understand now that perception, not reality, determines stress impact, that threat versus challenge creates profoundly different responses, that reframing is deliberate learnable skill, that specific questions and statements enable reframing, and that Chapter 4 provides reframing mastery, making stress productive, where threat perception made stress destructive. Chapter 5. Habit 5. Build deep social support network. Chapter 5 builds deep social support network, creating extraordinary stress resilience through genuine human connection. The social support research demonstrates that strong social connections represent the single most powerful predictor of stress resilience and overall well-being across hundreds of studies, that individuals with robust support networks suffer dramatically less psychological and physical damage from equivalent objective stressors compared to isolated individuals facing identical pressures, that social support works through multiple synergistic mechanisms including emotional validation, practical assistance, biological stress buffering, and cognitive perspective provision, that loneliness and isolation amplify stress impact more powerfully than any other single factor, and understanding that systematic relationship investment is not optional social nicety, but essential stress management strategy, making social connection foundational mental unbreakability habit. Social support buffers stress powerfully. Build deep connections, invest in relationships, or face stress alone. The support mechanisms reveal how relationships create resilience through distinct pathways that combine for extraordinary protective effect. Emotional support through empathetic listening and validation reduces stress by making you feel understood and less alone in struggle, creating sense that others care about your well-being. This emotional connection activates oxytocin release that directly counters cortisol stress response, creating biological stress buffering. Instrumental support through practical help, including assistance with tasks, resources, or problem solving, reduces objective stress burden by distributing load across multiple people rather than carrying everything alone. Informational support through advice, perspective, and knowledge helps navigate stressful situations more effectively by accessing others' experience and wisdom. Appraisal support through honest feedback helps accurately assess situations, preventing both catastrophizing that amplifies stress and minimizing that prevents appropriate response. The reciprocal support principle establishes that strongest, most resilient networks involve mutual give and take, where you both provide and receive support rather than one-directional relationships. Giving support to others strengthens relationships while simultaneously enhancing your own resilience through purpose, meaning, and perspective on your own challenges. Research shows that providing support benefits giver as much as receiver through neurochemical rewards and psychological satisfaction. One-way relationships where you only receive support create dependency and guilt, while only giving support creates depletion and resentment. Balanced reciprocal relationships where both people give and receive create sustainable, mutually beneficial resilience. The vulnerability requirement shows that receiving support requires revealing struggles, uncertainties, and fears rather than projecting invulnerable facade that prevents genuine connection. Many people, especially men and high achievers, resist vulnerability, believing that admitting difficulty signals weakness or incompetence. However, research demonstrates that appropriate vulnerability actually strengthens relationships by creating opportunities for intimacy and mutual support. Sharing struggles invites others to share their struggles, creating bonds through common humanity. Asking for help when needed honors others by trusting them with your well-being and giving them opportunity to contribute meaningfully. Vulnerability is courage, not weakness, enabling deep connection that superficial interaction cannot create. The quality over quantity principle emphasizes that resilience comes from depth of connection, not breadth of social network. Having 3 deeply trusting relationships provides far more stress buffering than having 30 superficial acquaintances. Deep relationships involve mutual vulnerability, regular meaningful contact, shared experiences, and genuine care for each other's well-being. These relationships take time and investment to develop, requiring prioritizing quality interaction over quantity of connections. Better to invest deeply in few relationships than spread effort thinly across many, preventing any from developing true depth. The diverse support network includes different types of relationships serving complementary functions. Close family provides unconditional acceptance and long-term stability. Close friends offer chosen relationships based on shared values and interests. Mentors provide wisdom, guidance, and perspective from experience. Peers facing similar challenges offer understanding and practical advice from shared context. Romantic partner provides intimate emotional and physical connection. Professional counselor offers trained support for processing difficulties. Diverse network ensures multiple sources of support when any single source is unavailable or inappropriate for specific need. The proactive investment requires deliberately prioritizing relationship time and effort rather than maintaining connections only when convenient or needed. Regular contact through calls, visits, or shared activities maintains relationships, preventing them from fading through neglect. Initiating connection rather than waiting for others to reach out demonstrates that you value relationship. Remembering important events and following up shows genuine care. Offering support when others struggle builds reciprocal foundation. Small, consistent investments maintain relationships that provide essential support during crisis. The professional support inclusion recognizes that therapists, counselors, and support groups provide valuable support that friends and family cannot always offer. Professional support provides trained expertise in processing difficult emotions, objective perspective free from personal involvement, and specialized knowledge about stress management and mental health. Regular therapy, even when not in crisis, builds psychological skills and self-awareness that enhance resilience. Support groups connect you with others facing similar challenges, providing understanding and practical strategies from lived experience. The implementation requires identifying current core support network, assessing depth and reciprocity of relationships, investing time and effort in deepening most important relationships through regular meaningful contact, practicing appropriate vulnerability by sharing struggles and asking for help when needed, diversifying support sources to include family, friends, mentors, and professional support. Proactively maintaining relationships through regular contact and support offers not just during crisis, seeking professional therapy or counseling for developing processing skills and accessing trained support, and treating social connection as essential stress resilience factor where isolation guaranteed stress vulnerability regardless of other resilience practices. Social support buffers stress powerfully. Build deep connections, invest in relationships, or face stress alone. You understand now that social support is most powerful resilience predictor, that support works through multiple mechanisms, that vulnerability enables deep connection, that reciprocal relationships are strongest, and that Chapter 5 provides relationship foundation, making stress manageable where isolation made stress overwhelming. Chapter 6. Habit 6. Create clear boundaries that protect your energy. Chapter 6 creates clear boundaries, protecting limited energy and attention from unlimited demands. The boundary necessity shows that without explicit boundaries, other people's needs and demands expand infinitely, consuming all available time, energy, and attention, creating inevitable burnout and resentment. That boundaries are not selfish self-protection, but essential self-preservation, enabling sustainable contribution to others. That clear boundaries actually improve relationships by preventing the resentment that accumulates when you consistently sacrifice your needs. That boundary violations occur not because others are malicious, but because absence of clear limits invites expansion into available space. And understanding that systematic boundary setting and enforcement is critical stress management skill, preventing the chronic overwhelm that destroys resilience, making boundary mastery essential mental unbreakability habit. Boundaries protect energy and prevent burnout. Set limits clearly. Establish boundaries or accept infinite demands. The boundary types taxonomy organizes boundaries into distinct categories, each requiring specific practices. Time boundaries protect your schedule and availability, preventing others from consuming all available time through unlimited requests and interruptions. This includes establishing specific work hours, protecting personal time, evenings and weekends, scheduling unavailability for focused work or recovery, and declining requests that exceed capacity. Emotional boundaries prevent others' emotions, problems, and drama from overwhelming your emotional capacity. This includes not taking responsibility for others' feelings, maintaining emotional separation from others' crises, and limiting exposure to emotionally draining people or situations. Physical boundaries protect your personal space and body from unwanted touch intrusion or violation. Mental boundaries protect your attention and cognitive capacity from constant interruptions, demands, and information overload. Each boundary type requires awareness of limits and willingness to enforce them. The boundary communication requires clear, direct statement of limits without excessive explanation, justification, or apology. Many people, especially women and people pleasers, struggle with boundary communication, offering lengthy apologetic explanations that invite negotiation and undermine boundary. Effective boundary communication states limit clearly without justification. I am not available after 6 p.m. is clear boundary. I would love to help, but I am not available after 6 p.m. because I need family time offers justification, inviting debate about whether your reason is valid enough to warrant declining. Simple, clear statements of limits without justification communicate that boundary is non-negotiable decision, not opening for discussion. This feels uncomfortable initially, but becomes easier with practice. The guilt management addresses the intense guilt many people feel when setting boundaries, particularly if accustomed to saying yes to all requests. Guilt arises from belief that declining requests makes you selfish, uncaring, or lazy. However, saying yes to everything guarantees eventual burnout, preventing any contribution when completely depleted. Setting boundaries enables sustainable long-term contribution rather than brief, intense giving followed by collapse. Remind yourself that boundaries protect your capacity to contribute sustainably, that your needs matter equally to others' needs, that declining some requests enables saying yes to highest priorities, and that others will adjust to your boundaries. Guilt typically diminishes as you experience benefits of boundary enforcement. The boundary enforcement consistency means maintaining boundaries despite pressure, discomfort, or others' disappointment. Setting boundary once then abandoning it under pressure teaches others that your boundaries are negotiable through sufficient persistence or emotional manipulation. Consistent enforcement teaches others that your boundaries are firm, requiring them to adjust expectations and respect limits. Initial boundary enforcement often meets resistance as others test whether you will maintain boundary or yield to pressure. Remaining firm through initial resistance establishes boundary credibility, making future enforcement easier as others learn to respect limits without testing. The relationship impact reality acknowledges that boundary setting may disappoint some people, particularly those benefiting from your lack of boundaries. The colleague who regularly requests last-minute help may be frustrated when you decline. The friend who calls for hour-long venting sessions may be disappointed when you limit calls to 30 minutes. The family member who expects immediate availability may feel rejected when you establish unavailability windows. Accept that boundary enforcement may temporarily disappoint some people, recognizing that healthy relationships ultimately strengthen through clear, respectful boundaries, while relationships based on unlimited availability were unsustainable anyway. The yes-no prioritization requires that every yes to one thing is inherent no to something else due to finite time and energy. Saying yes to excessive work requests means saying no to family time, exercise, or recovery. Saying yes to friends' crisis means saying no to your own priorities. Conscious prioritization involves identifying highest value uses of limited resources, then protecting those through boundaries. Ask whether request aligns with priorities, what else you are saying no to by saying yes, and whether you can sustain commitment without resentment. Saying no to lower priorities enables protecting highest priorities. The self-care boundary establishes that certain activities, including sleep, exercise, recovery, and solitude, are non-negotiable protected time, not subject to others' requests or needs. These self-care practices maintain your capacity to handle stress and contribute to others, making them highest priority, not selfish indulgence. Communicate clearly that these times are unavailable, treating them as seriously as important meetings because they are foundation of your resilience and effectiveness. The implementation requires identifying areas where lack of boundaries creates stress, overwhelm, or resentment, establishing specific, clear boundaries in those areas, defining exact limits, communicating boundaries directly without excessive explanation or apology, maintaining boundary enforcement consistently despite pressure or others' disappointment. Managing guilt by recognizing boundaries enables sustainable contribution. Prioritizing consciously, saying no to lower priorities, protecting highest values. treating self-care activities as non-negotiable protected time, and treating boundary protection as preventing stress overwhelm and burnout where unlimited demands guaranteed eventual collapse. Boundaries protect energy and prevent burnout. Set limits clearly. Establish boundaries or accept infinite demands. You understand now that boundaries prevent unlimited demands from consuming capacity, that clear communication without justification works best, that consistency establishes boundary credibility, that disappointment is acceptable price for sustainability, and that Chapter 6 provides boundary mastery, making energy protection possible where unlimited availability guaranteed burnout. Chapter 7. Habit 7. Develop present moment awareness through daily practice. Chapter 7 develops present moment awareness, reducing the rumination and worry that create majority of experienced stress. The mindfulness stress reduction shows that most psychological stress comes not from present reality, but from dwelling on past regrets or worrying about future threats that may never occur. That present moment rarely contains the disaster that rumination and worry anticipate, making mental time travel the primary stress generator. That present moment awareness interrupts rumination and catastrophizing by anchoring attention in current reality. That mindfulness practice measurably reduces stress hormones including cortisol while increasing resilience and well-being across hundreds of research studies, and understanding that present moment awareness is trainable skill through systematic daily practice, making mindfulness essential mental unbreakability habit. Present moment awareness reduces rumination and worry. Practice mindfulness daily. Stay present or suffer mental time travel. The mental time travel problem reveals how mind's tendency to dwell on past and future creates suffering beyond objective circumstances. When present moment is relatively calm, mind travels to past, replaying mistakes, failures, or painful experiences, generating guilt, shame, or regret. When not dwelling on past, mind projects into future, imagining potential disasters, threats, or losses, generating anxiety and dread. This constant mental time travel means you rarely experience present reality, instead experiencing past memories or future fantasies that may never occur. The irony is that actual present moment is usually manageable when you attend to it directly, but mental time travel to past regrets or future fears creates intense suffering despite relatively benign present circumstances. The formal mindfulness meditation provides structured practice for developing present moment awareness through focused attention training. Sit comfortably in quiet location, setting timer for desired duration, starting with 5 to 10 minutes. Focus attention on physical sensation of breathing, noticing air moving through nostrils or abdomen rising and falling. When you notice mind has wandered to thoughts, memories, or plans, gently acknowledge the wandering without judgment, then return attention to breath. Mind will wander hundreds of times during session. Each noticing and returning is successful practice, not failure, building attention, control, and present moment awareness. Practice daily, ideally same time each day, creating consistent habit. The wandering mind acceptance recognizes that mind wandering during meditation is not failure, but expected normal occurrence, providing opportunity for training attention. Untrained mind wanders constantly, rarely maintaining focus on chosen object for even 30 seconds. Expecting mind to remain focused perfectly sets up frustration and perceived failure. Instead, recognize that noticing mind has wandered and choosing to return attention is the actual practice. Each cycle of wandering, noticing, returning strengthens attention control, like repetitions in physical exercise. Accept wandering as natural part of practice, maintaining patient, gentle attitude toward your mind. The informal mindfulness practice applies present moment awareness to daily activities, extending practice beyond formal meditation. Mindful eating involves fully attending to sensory experience of food, including taste, texture, smell, and appearance, rather than eating while distracted by phone or television. Mindful walking means noticing physical sensations of movement, ground contact, and surroundings, rather than walking on autopilot, lost in thought. Mindful conversation involves fully attending to speaker and your own responses, rather than planning your next statement while they talk. Any routine activity becomes mindfulness practice when you bring full attention to direct sensory experience rather than operating on autopilot. The thought awareness practice involves noticing thoughts as mental events rather than identifying with them as truth or reality. When stressed thought arises, like "I cannot handle this" or "everything is falling apart," notice this is a thought, not fact. Observing thoughts creates psychological distance, reducing their power to generate stress. Thoughts are mental events passing through awareness, not necessarily accurate representations of reality. Recognizing this prevents getting swept into thought-generated stress spirals. Notice thought patterns including catastrophizing, all or nothing thinking, or mind reading that generate unnecessary stress. The physical anchor technique uses bodily sensations as anchor for present moment awareness, particularly during stress. When feeling overwhelmed, shift attention to physical sensations, including feeling of feet on ground, sensation of breathing, or physical tension in body. Physical sensations are always present and real, unlike thoughts, which may be fantasies. Anchoring in physical reality interrupts rumination and worry, bringing awareness back to manageable present moment. Practice throughout day whenever you notice stress or distraction. The breath regulation combines mindfulness with physiology by using controlled breathing to activate parasympathetic nervous system and calm stress response. Slow deep breathing with extended exhale activates vagus nerve, triggering relaxation response. Practice for 7-8 breathing pattern, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 7 counts, exhaling for 8 counts. Extended exhale is key to parasympathetic activation. Combine breath awareness with breath regulation, getting dual benefit of present moment focus and physiological stress reduction. The progressive practice starts with brief manageable sessions, building duration as capacity develops. Start with 5 minutes daily meditation. After a week or two of consistent practice, increase to 10 minutes. Eventually build to 20 or 30 minutes as sustainable daily practice. Brief consistent practice builds habit more effectively than occasional long sessions. Similarly, start informal mindfulness with one mindful meal or walk daily, gradually expanding to more activities as practice feels natural. The implementation requires establishing daily formal meditation practice, starting with 5 to 10 minutes using breath as focus object. Accepting mind wandering as natural part of practice, gently returning attention each time. Applying informal mindfulness to daily activities, bringing full sensory attention to routine tasks. Practicing thought awareness, recognizing thoughts as mental events, not facts. Using physical sensations as anchors when feeling stressed or distracted. Combining breath awareness with slow breathing for dual benefit, starting with brief sessions, progressively building duration, and treating present moment awareness as reducing stress, where mental time travel to past regrets and future worries created majority of suffering. Present moment awareness reduces rumination and worry. Practice mindfulness daily. Stay present or suffer mental time travel. You understand now that most stress comes from mental time travel, not present reality. That mindfulness interrupts rumination and worry. That practice involves gentle returning, not perfect focus. That physical anchors bring awareness to present. And that Chapter 7 provides mindfulness practice, making present awareness possible where mental time travel created unnecessary suffering. Chapter 8. Habit 8. Maintain optimistic explanatory style. Chapter 8 maintains optimistic explanatory style, interpreting setbacks as temporary, specific, and external, rather than permanent, pervasive, and personal, creating resilience that prevents learned helplessness. The explanatory style research pioneered by Martin Seligman shows that how you habitually explain negative events profoundly affects stress, resilience, depression risk, and overall well-being. That pessimistic explanatory style, seeing setbacks as permanent, affecting everything, and caused entirely by personal flaws, creates learned helplessness, where you stop trying because effort seems futile. That optimistic explanatory style, seeing setbacks as temporary, affecting only specific area and caused by changeable circumstances, creates resilience and persistent effort. That explanatory style is learned pattern typically formed in childhood, but modifiable through deliberate practice at any age, and understanding that systematic optimistic reframing is essential. Mental unbreakability habit, transforming setbacks into temporary specific challenges rather than permanent pervasive reflections of fundamental inadequacy. Optimistic explanatory style builds resilience. Interpret setbacks as temporary and specific. Reframe optimistically or develop helplessness. The 3 dimensions framework organizes explanatory style into permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization, each operating independently. Permanence dimension determines whether you view setback as temporary situation that will improve or permanent, unchangeable reality. Optimistic permanence interprets job rejection as temporary. I did not get this particular job but will get another, while pessimistic permanence interprets as permanent. I cannot get hired, meaning future efforts are futile. Pervasiveness dimension determines whether you view setback as affecting only specific domain or contaminating everything in life. Optimistic pervasiveness interprets relationship conflict as specific problem in this relationship, while pessimistic pervasiveness interprets as I am bad at all relationships. Personalization dimension determines whether you attribute setback entirely to personal flaws or recognize external contributing factors. Optimistic personalization interprets poor performance as combination of difficult circumstances and areas for improvement, while pessimistic personalization interprets as I am incompetent ignoring situational factors. The automatic pessimism awareness requires noticing your habitual explanatory patterns, particularly during stress, when automatic explanations emerge without conscious filtering. After setback, notice your immediate interpretation. Do you think this always happens, suggesting permanence? Do you think everything is ruined, suggesting pervasiveness? Do you think it is entirely your fault, suggesting excessive personalization? Most people have habitual pessimistic patterns in at least one dimension, often learned from parents, teachers, or culture. Awareness is prerequisite for change, enabling you to catch automatic pessimistic explanations before they generate helplessness. The deliberate optimistic reframe involves systematically challenging automatic pessimistic explanations using specific questions for each dimension. For permanence challenge, ask, is this really permanent or temporary? What evidence suggests this will improve? When have similar situations improved before? For pervasiveness challenge, ask, does this really affect everything or just this specific area? What parts of life are still going well? How can I contain this problem? For personalization challenge, ask what external factors contributed to this outcome. What can I control versus what is outside my control? What would I tell friend in this situation? These questions generate optimistic alternative explanations that are accurate, not just positive thinking. The evidence-based optimism distinguishes between realistic optimism grounded in evidence and Pollyannish denial ignoring reality. Optimistic explanatory style does not mean denying problems or pretending everything is fine. Temporary optimism acknowledges this is difficult right now and recognizes it will improve with time and effort, not denies difficulty exists. Specific optimism identifies particular problem area while recognizing other areas function, while not pretends no problems exist anywhere. Balanced personalization acknowledges your contribution to problem while recognizing external factors, not absolves all responsibility or assigns all blame. Evidence-based optimism enables effective problem solving by seeing setbacks accurately as temporary, specific, and partially controllable rather than distorted by pessimistic lens. The positive event interpretation applies explanatory style not only to negative events but also to positive outcomes. Optimistic style interprets success as partially permanent. I have ability that will serve me in future. Somewhat pervasive, this success reflects broader competence, and partially personal, my effort and choices contributed to this outcome. This builds confidence and expectation of future success. Pessimistic style interprets success as temporary, pure luck this time, specific, only relevant to this particular situation, and external, entirely due to others' help or easy circumstances. This prevents confidence building and expectation remains negative despite evidence of success. The learned optimism practice developed by Seligman provides systematic training for shifting from pessimistic to optimistic explanatory style through ABCD model. A is adversity or activating event. B is belief or automatic interpretation. C is consequence or emotional and behavioral result. D is disputation, where you challenge automatic pessimistic belief. E is energization from more optimistic interpretation, enabling effective action. Practice ABCD after setbacks, writing out each element, making thought process explicit, and developing habit of disputing pessimistic interpretations. The gradual automaticity development recognizes that optimistic reframing initially requires deliberate conscious effort, but eventually becomes increasingly automatic through consistent practice. Early practice requires stopping and consciously working through optimistic reframe questions or ABCD model. This feels effortful and artificial initially. However, with weeks and months of consistent practice, optimistic interpretations begin emerging more automatically, requiring less deliberate effort. Eventually, optimistic style becomes default habitual response rather than requiring conscious reframing, though some situations may still benefit from explicit ABCD practice. The implementation requires developing awareness of your automatic explanatory style, particularly after setbacks, deliberately reframing automatic pessimistic explanations using three-dimension questions, distinguishing evidence-based optimism from Pollyannish denial, applying optimistic interpretation to positive events, building confidence, practicing systematic ABCD disputation after significant setbacks, committing to consistent practice, accepting initial effort before automaticity develops, and treating optimistic explanatory style as building resilience, where pessimistic interpretation created learned helplessness, making efforts seem futile despite actual control and potential for improvement. Optimistic explanatory style builds resilience. Interpret setbacks as temporary and specific. Reframe optimistically or develop helplessness. You understand now that the explanatory style profoundly affects resilience, that three dimensions of permanence, pervasiveness, personalization operate independently, that optimistic reframe requires deliberate practice initially, that evidence-based optimism differs from denial, and that Chapter 8 provides explanatory style mastery, making resilient interpretation possible where pessimistic style created helplessness. Chapter 9. Habit 9. Engage regular cathartic release of accumulated stress. Chapter 9 engages regular cathartic release, preventing destructive stress accumulation through healthy expression and discharge. The cathartic release necessity shows that despite best stress management practices, some stress inevitably accumulates, requiring periodic release to prevent eventual explosive or implosive breakdown. That unexpressed suppressed stress does not simply disappear, but accumulates, creating increasing physical tension, emotional pressure, and psychological strain. That accumulated stress eventually manifests as physical symptoms, including headaches, digestive problems, muscle tension, or illness, as emotional outbursts, including inappropriate anger, tears, or irritability, or as psychological problems, including anxiety, depression, or burnout. That healthy cathartic release provides safe, controlled channels for discharging accumulated stress before destructive manifestation, and understanding that regular scheduled cathartic practice is essential stress hygiene, preventing the dangerous buildup that occurs when stress only enters, never exits. Unexpressed stress accumulates destructively. Release through healthy channels regularly. Express cathartic or accumulate damage. The suppression damage mechanism reveals why unexpressed stress creates such profound problems. When you experience stress but cannot or do not express it due to social norms, professional requirements, or personal habits, the physiological arousal and emotional energy do not simply dissipate but remain trapped in body and mind. Muscle tension from stress response persists, creating chronic tightness, particularly in shoulders, neck, and jaw. Stress hormones remain partially elevated, never fully clearing between stresses. Unexpressed emotions create psychological pressure similar to steam in closed container building until release becomes necessary. Over weeks and months, this accumulation creates baseline state of tension and arousal, making you feel constantly on edge while simultaneously depleting energy through continuous containment effort. The intense physical exercise provides accessible cathartic release through vigorous movement that discharges stress energy. High-intensity interval training, sprint intervals, heavy lifting, boxing, or any intense physical activity creates outlet for accumulated physiological arousal that stress generates. During intense exercise, you can release tension, aggression, and pent-up energy that would be inappropriate in social contexts. Physical exertion metabolizes stress hormones, accelerating their clearance from system. The exhaustion following intense exercise creates temporary reprieve from mental stress and improves subsequent sleep quality. Intensity matters more than duration, with 20 minutes of truly intense exercise providing more cathartic benefit than an hour of moderate activity. The expressive writing offers cathartic release through unfiltered emotional expression on paper. Set timer for 15 to 20 minutes and write continuously about stressful experiences, emotions, and thoughts without stopping to edit, judge, or censor. Write for yourself, not imagining audience, allowing complete honesty about difficult feelings, including anger, fear, resentment, or shame that you cannot express elsewhere. Research shows expressive writing reduces stress, improves immune function, and enhances psychological well-being through helping process and make sense of difficult experiences while providing safe outlet for double emotions. Destroy pages after writing if concerned about privacy, enabling completely uninhibited expression. The creative expression channels stress through artistic creation, including painting, drawing, music, dance, or any creative activity. Creative expression accesses emotional processing through nonverbal right brain pathways, bypassing the verbal analytical left brain that sometimes blocks emotional release. You need not be a skilled artist to benefit from cathartic creative expression. Aggressive painting, vigorous drumming, or free-form dance all provide outlets for accumulated stress energy. creative process enters flow state that temporarily suspends stress rumination, while creative output externalizes internal emotional experience, making it visible and manageable. The controlled emotional expression in safe contexts provides cathartic release through allowing yourself to fully feel and express difficult emotions that you suppress in daily life. This might include crying alone or with trusted person when feeling sad or overwhelmed, screaming into pillow or in car when feeling frustrated or angry, or allowing yourself to fully experience and express fear or vulnerability in therapy or with intimate partner. Safe context is critical for healthy catharsis, requiring privacy or trusted witness, and ensuring expression does not harm self, others, or relationships. Controlled expression releases emotional pressure without destructive consequences. The regular scheduling prevents dangerous accumulation by ensuring cathartic release happens consistently before critical buildup. Schedule weekly cathartic session dedicating time specifically for stress release through chosen method. Regular practice prevents the dangerous pattern of accumulating stress for weeks or months until explosion or breakdown forces release in destructive way. Scheduled release feels less urgent or desperate than crisis-driven release, creating sustainable healthy pattern. The multiple methods approach recognizes that different stresses and emotional states may benefit from different cathartic channels. Physical stress and tension may release best through intense exercise. Emotional complexity may process best through expressive writing. Anger or frustration may discharge best through aggressive creative expression. Develop familiarity with multiple release methods, enabling appropriate matching to current need, rather than forcing all stress through single channel. The post-catharsis recovery involves allowing time after intense release for integration and restoration. After intense physical exercise, allow body to cool down and refuel. After emotional writing or expression, allow yourself to decompress before returning to demands. Notice how you feel after cathartic release, typically calmer, clearer, and more grounded. This positive feedback reinforces practice and motivates continued regular release. The implementation requires selecting preferred cathartic release method or methods from intense physical exercise, expressive writing, creative expression, or controlled emotional expression. Scheduling regular weekly sessions for cathartic practice, preventing dangerous accumulation. Engaging fully without holding back during release sessions. Developing multiple methods for different stress types, allowing post-catharsis recovery time, and treating regular cathartic release as essential stress. Hygiene, preventing destructive accumulation where suppression created eventual explosion or implosion. Unexpressed stress accumulates destructively. Release through healthy channels regularly. Express cathartic or accumulate damage. You understand now that unexpressed stress accumulates, creating problems, that multiple healthy release channels exist, that regular scheduling prevents dangerous buildup, that intensity matters for cathartic benefit, and that Chapter 9 provides release practice making healthy discharge possible where suppression created destructive accumulation. Chapter 10. Habit 10. Integrate all habits into resilient lifestyle. Chapter 10 integrates all 9 stress management habits into comprehensive resilient lifestyle, creating genuine mental unbreakability. The integration principle shows that individual habits practiced in isolation provide modest benefits, but integrated habits practiced together create synergistic effects, producing extraordinary resilience, exceeding sum of individual parts. That comprehensive lifestyle approach, addressing multiple resilience dimensions simultaneously, creates robust protection against diverse stresses. That integration requires transforming isolated practices into automatic, interconnected daily routines. That mental unbreakability emerges not from any single technique, but from sustained commitment to complete resilient lifestyle, and understanding that integration transforms stress management from occasional practice into who you are, making resilience your natural baseline state, rather than requiring constant effortful maintenance. Integration compounds resilience synergistically. Stack habits into lifestyle. Integrate comprehensively or remain fragile. The synergistic effects reveal why integrated practice dramatically outperforms isolated techniques. Quality sleep enhances exercise performance and recovery, while exercise improves sleep quality, creating virtuous cycle. Physical fitness provides energy for stress inoculation practice, while inoculation builds mental toughness, supporting physical training. Mindfulness practice enhances cognitive reframing ability, while reframing reduces rumination, supporting mindfulness development. Social support provides accountability for healthy habits, while engaging in healthy activities together strengthens relationships. Each habit enables and amplifies others, creating compounding returns where whole exceeds sum of parts. The habit stacking strategy connects new resilience practices to existing routines, creating automatic behavior chains. Morning routine might stack meditation after waking, cold shower after meditation, and healthy breakfast after shower, creating integrated sequence. Evening routine might stack exercise after work, expressive writing after exercise, and wind down ritual after writing. Stacking creates triggers where completing one behavior automatically cues next, eliminating decision fatigue and building automatic execution. The chain becomes single integrated routine rather than multiple separate decisions. The gradual progressive implementation prevents overwhelm by starting with foundation habits, then adding progressively rather than attempting comprehensive transformation simultaneously. Start with sleep prioritization as most critical foundation. After establishing consistent quality sleep for 2 to 3 weeks, add regular exercise. After exercise becomes consistent, add stress inoculation practice. Continue adding one habit every few weeks until all 9 habits integrate into lifestyle. Gradual progression creates sustainable lasting change, where attempting everything simultaneously creates overwhelm and abandonment. The minimal viable practice establishes baseline for each habit that you can maintain even during difficult, demanding periods. Minimal sleep practice is 7 hours nightly. Minimal exercise is 20-minute walk daily. Minimal stress inoculation is 30-second cold shower. Minimal cognitive reframing is 1 deliberate reframe daily. These minimums maintain habit continuity during challenging times, preventing complete abandonment that requires rebuilding from zero. Minimum practice is infinitely better than no practice, maintaining habit momentum and identity. The flexible adaptation recognizes that resilient lifestyle requires sustainable long-term commitment, necessitating adaptation to changing life circumstances. New parent may need to adjust exercise timing and shorten duration while maintaining consistency. Travel may require modifying routine while preserving core elements. Illness or injury may require reducing intensity while continuing adapted practice. Flexibility within structure maintains habits through life changes, where rigid, inflexible approach leads to abandonment when circumstances prevent exact original routine. The identity integration shifts from viewing habits as things you do to habits as expressions of who you are. Rather than I practice meditation, become I am person who meditates. Rather than I exercise sometimes, become I am athletic person. Identity level integration makes habits feel authentic, natural, rather than imposed disciplines requiring willpower. Behavior consistent with identity feels right, while behavior inconsistent with identity feels wrong, creating powerful intrinsic motivation for maintaining habits. The environmental design creates physical and social environment supporting integrated resilient lifestyle. Bedroom optimized for sleep with darkness, quiet, and coolness. Kitchen stocked with healthy foods, removing junk food temptation. Exercise equipment easily accessible, or gym membership convenient. Calendar blocking protected time for key practices. Social environment includes people who share and support healthy habits. Environment supporting resilience makes habits easier, while environment undermining resilience makes habits harder, making environmental design essential for sustainable integration. The periodic review assesses integrated practice every few months, identifying what works well and what needs adjustment. Review sleep quality and duration. Evaluate exercise consistency and enjoyment. Assess stress levels and resilience. Notice which habits feel automatic versus which still require significant effort. Adjust practices based on honest assessment, maintaining what works while modifying what does not. Periodic review prevents drift and enables continuous improvement. The long-term commitment perspective recognizes that mental unbreakability is not achieved through weeks or months, but through years and decades of sustained practice. Initial motivation eventually fades, requiring systems and identity, rather than motivation to sustain practice. Bad days and weeks will occur where practice falters. Recovery from lapses without self-judgment maintains long-term trajectory. View setbacks as normal part of long journey, not as failures invalidating entire approach. Decade from now, you will be completely different person through sustained daily practice. The implementation requires selecting 1 or 2 foundation habits to start practicing immediately, prioritizing sleep and physical foundation. Stacking habits into morning and evening routines, creating automatic behavioral chains. Adding additional habits progressively every few weeks until all 9 habits integrate into comprehensive lifestyle. Establishing minimal viable practice for each habit, maintaining consistency during difficult periods, adapting practices flexibly to changing circumstances while preserving core habits, developing identity as a resilient person, making habits feel authentic, designing environment to support integrated practice, reviewing and adjusting periodically, maintaining long-term commitment perspective, accepting that sustainable transformation requires years, not weeks, and treating integrated resilient lifestyle as creating genuine mental unbreakability, where isolated occasional practice created fragile conditional resilience. You have learned 10 stress management habits that make you mentally unbreakable. Habit 1. Establishing recovery rituals. Habit 2. Practicing stress inoculation. Habit 3. Maintaining physical foundation. Habit 4. Deploying cognitive reframing. Habit 5. Building social support. Habit 6. Creating clear boundaries. Habit 7. Developing mindfulness practice. Habit 8. Maintaining optimistic style. Habit 9. Engaging cathartic release. Habit 10. Integrating into lifestyle. What matters now is implementing one habit today. 5 immediate priorities. Schedule 8 hours sleep tonight. Take 1 minute cold shower tomorrow morning. Reframe one stressor as challenge. Reach out to one support person. Establish one clear boundary this week. Start immediately. Build progressively. Become unbreakable. Stop breaking under stress and start building mental unbreakability. Stop stress-induced suffering and start systematic resilience. Practice 10 habits daily. Integrate comprehensively and become mentally unbreakable through unwavering commitment starting right now today.